Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art2Life podcast. I am so excited to be talking today with Bonnie Wan. She is a globally renowned brand strategist. Today, her new book is coming out. It's called The Life Brief, a playbook for no regrets living. And I just love that tagline. And I also love the description. But first off, welcome. Okay.
Thank you for having me. I am a big fan.
Awesome. Well, it goes both ways. Okay, so the life brief is the essential playbook to unlock what you want in life. This three-step tool, created by globally renowned brand strategist Bonnie Wan, realigns your path with your dreams personally, professionally, culturally, and spiritually. Break through the clutter and create a life that is wholly your own. Did you write that? That's so good. Just love that.
Thank you, Nick. I think growing up in a creative industry has really, even as a strategist, it has exposed me to the vivid possibilities that we have in art and in life. And I think I've met so many people along the way who think in a very limited fashion because we've all been conditioned to think we have only two choices ever: yes or no, this or that, stay or go.
Yeah.
But
And
life
so,
is as colorful as it is in art and creativity.
yeah. So give us a little bit of the background, right? I mean, the job of a brand strategist, I mean, it's about getting clarity and sharp focus. And I love. I mean, that writing and the whole book, in fact, has that. It's just so precise and clean and it just drops in. I can understand it so simply. It's just so beautifully written. But I know has come out of years of working in this field. So tell us a little bit about that.
My job as a strategist is what I call to make meaning in messiness
Mm,
and to distill every situation, every problem, every ambition, every company to its essence. And the fewer words, the better. And that's what I mean when I talk in the book about getting sharp and sticky, because when we can distill something to its essence, and for me, a great brand can be distilled into one word, maybe three words, at most a sentence. And that gives you such a clear focal point from which you can make decisions, from which you can create, from which you can innovate. People often think that you need a lot to generate a lot. But what I know in my work as a strategist is that you need dead simple in order to explode what you create. Because that simplicity of essence allows you to always be authentic, but take that idea into all sorts of swim lanes and streams and oceans.
yes, and I know this from helping artists and working myself as an artist and as well as an entrepreneur. The this is so beautifully applied to one's life. And I love how you've done this because if we can gain clarity, everything becomes simpler and it becomes easier and the possibilities open up. It opens up your thinking, which is where we want to be as creators.
That's exactly right. I use the word unlock
Mm.
a lot throughout the book, right? When you have clarity, it unlocks your decisions, your choices, your actions. And you touched on it. It brings ease and flow to how we move through the world rather than always sitting in confusion or that fog or worse yet, sleepwalking. just doing things out of habit.
Yeah. When I work with artists, really what I'm doing is bringing them back to their own authenticity so they can become clear. So then they can put something out in the world that others can come to. And because the messaging is clear, even just an intuitive feeling, that others who are coming, collectors, we're making a thing as artists and we want the world to respond to it. And when it's clear, it attracts the right kind of people. It's how you blow up a career, what you're talking about. And of course, as a brand strategist, whether it's Nike or Patagonia, I mean, when you nail it, it explodes. It everyone comes who wants to be there because they know what it is.
Yes, the enemy of the clarity, or actually the response, you talked about growth and expansion and being a magnet in the world to attract people who believe in your same point of view, share your beliefs, share your values. That's what that clarity does. But when we diffuse it, when we aren't clear, when we're copying our competitors or following in someone else's footsteps, we suffer the outcome of indifference. So for brands, they become wallpaper. They start to look like everyone else in their space. And then it's very hard for the consumer or whoever they're trying to attract to think, wait a second, what do I want? When I make my selection. But when you are clear, then you're going to show up in something that is not only distinct, but true. And that's the tension, that's the line we want to walk, right? As we live as people, we want to be true to ourselves and who we've always been or who are we are becoming, but we also want to stand out and break through.
Yes. Art making is the practice of becoming yourself. That's when it's done properly. Like when you're in it, that's such a good way to think about it, that only you are going to make this. It'll only happen for you. It'll only happen once in this lifetime. In the world, if you don't make it, it'll be lost forever. And I just love how you think about brands and how it's such a logical, understandable story, how you've done this for so long. And then you somehow, and I'm curious about this, how you kind of applied it. You work this, all great things come out of something you do for yourself. And I think this is the case with you, but I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you turned inward on this and then made this first for you and now for others in this beautiful book.
Well, the first moment, the birth story or the origin story came out of a moment of darkness and despair. And what I've learned in life and in art, that agitation usually is that fulcrum for creation. It's not comfort, because comfort doesn't produce any change. We're just basking in our comfort. So it was a really dark moment in my life. I had 3 kids under the age of 5. We were old but new parents, and my husband and I just didn't know how this really massive change in our lives was going to affect our relationship. And it wasn't great. We were fighting, we were negotiating, we were debating, we were competing, critiquing everything that we didn't want. We didn't imagine when we said I do in our marriage, but it was chaos. And I was the primary breadwinner. I was the 24-hour restaurant. I was plate planning. I was doing the finances. It was just, I felt an imbalance and I couldn't see my way out. But it's in those moments of friction I found, we can call it a crossroads, we can call it a crisis of meaning, but it's in there when, if we engage and deeply engage and do it in writing. So that's the art form that allows us to be in relationship with ourselves and see ourselves with distance, perspective, and through a lens of curiosity. Because when we capture things in writing, when we allow it to come out of us, and then we can set it aside and then revisit it, now can be in a different kind of relationship than the looping stories and thoughts that just continue in our minds. And my loop in the theater of my mind at that time was that my husband was the problem, that I was in the wrong partnership and I had to get out. And that felt terrifying, what that road looked like. But once I allowed myself to do my strategist thing, which is collect all the data, get it all out on the paper, lay it out on the table. And I started writing and writing with free permission, permission to be nakedly honest, not with filters, not with an editing mind, not with my parents' voices in my head, but just to write really freely. What do I want in this moment, in this chapter, as I look ahead? And what came out on paper was a big aha when I reread it. I realized, oh, my husband is not the problem. It's how I spend my time.
Mhm.
Because through all the meandering writings and phrasing, there was this deep longing for time with my children, meaningful time with my husband, not scheduling time, not parenting time, but time that we used to have to celebrate each other, to support each other, and then time for myself, which as a woman and as a mom, that's kind of forbidden territory because we have unspoken rules in our culture that your job as a mother is to be there for your children 24/7. And I also had employees. And so when I had that first lightning rod of an insight, just looking at the writing, I could already see that my time was spread too thin, that I was saying yes to people that were distractions, or that I was saying yes to meetings that I didn't need to be there. And at the end of the day, I had nothing left for the things that really mattered, for the people that really mattered. And so that immediate insight gave me a redirection in which to think and imagine what I wanted it to be instead, the shift I would want.
Mhm. Yeah. And I love that, the title of your book, The Life Brief, obviously comes from the creative brief, which is that document where the gathering place to then give yourself objectivity and that you can come in and visit it and go back and evolve with it, which is not unlike a piece of art. And that is so cool to have something outside of yourself to visit, work on, go away, visitation, absence, and grow and learn and gain objectivity. So I mean, as soon as I saw the title, I knew everything about, what you were up to. It's just so beautiful. And you've outlined a kind of process, which I'm excited to talk about a little today, because for everyone listening, there's some wonderful questions and kind of go through, just a general overview of the process that someone would go through. I mean, this is a book about, it's a tool, to gain perspective, to create your own life brief.
Yes, there's three parts to it. I call it a practice in three parts. And practice is a really important part of the word because, like a practice, it gets easier the more you do it. This isn't a one and done thing. Hopefully, it's something you adopt and then make your own the more you do it. But the three parts are getting messy so that you can get clear. And once you get clear, then you can get active. But I come from a business world and a culture that has a bias for action. Do,
Yeah.
productivity, efficiency, optimization. The problem is if you act without clarity, you'll have a lot of U-turns. And that's okay if you enjoy that. But if you allow yourself, again, to get the ingredients out, to get to know yourself and unearth and give yourself permission to play with your thoughts, to put everything out on the table, then you have all the ingredients to work with. And this is very art-like. You can say, hey, which ingredients do I feel invigorated by? which ingredients drain me? And you start to be in relationship with each one, and then you can focus in and use the invigorating ingredients as your clay for your clarity. And you
Hmm.
can wipe away all the distractions and the drama and kind of put them over in the parking lot or in the trash bin, wherever the compost, whatever, a good analogy for you. And you get to zero in on the juicy stuff. And that becomes your clay for clarity. And now this all doesn't have to take a lot of time. People will say to me, I'm really busy. I don't have time to do this thing. And I've zeroed in on the practices and the prompts and the questions that are most penetrating, most generative, that you can do in 10 minutes a day. They're bite size. I call them inexcusable and optimally irresistible. So you can't deny yourself this. And if you can get generative with the ingredients and get messy, then you're going to have plenty to work with when it comes to getting clear and declaring what you want. And then action is a byproduct. Because as soon as you feel that invigorated sense of yes, or I call it yes, your attention automatically shifts when you look at your day. And when your attention shifts, then all your actions and behaviors follow.
Yeah.
So it's not as hard as it sounds.
It's so interesting and kind of amazing to me that you're talking about getting messy. And my mind just goes to how I help artists. And it is exactly that. I call it playing and literally like just get in there and just mess and play and no thinking. And I'm curious about what you think about this. Because this has been my experience. What happens when we do that, when we don't know what we're going to do next because we're just messing around? Our intuition comes in because we don't have an outcome. And when our intuition comes in, we make things and then later we can notice something and little bits of parts or whatever that we say yes to, like, oh my God, that corner is incredible, and therein are the breadcrumbs to where we get to go next. And I'm wondering, in your process that you're describing, and I read a little bit about it, but there's intuition here. Like we all know, like maybe we actually do know, our soul knows where we're going, but we can't hear it yet. And this process opens that up. Is that some of what you're teaching?
This is what I love and why I'm so excited to talk to you because it is such the process of art. And I've watched your videos, I've taken some of your lessons, and it is exactly that. And we go back to that word unlock. We
Mhm.
are all living from our neck up more and more. Technology is fantastic. It's the way we can have this conversation together. But we need to unlock other parts of ourselves. And when we touch and feel and get messy, allow ourselves permission to be in the sandbox, get muddy with it, muddy emotionally, that's when we unlock our intuition and deeper parts of ourselves that we have not given time or space for. And when those things come, yes, you can examine that corner and go, wait, I didn't know that was there. Let me noodle in there a little bit more.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
what's underneath that? And what if I put a little zhuzh on that?
Hmm.
And in part two, I open part two of the book with this part is all about your intuition and your feelings. Only you know when your life brief is done. And it's not a single life brief, by the way.
Yeah.
You can life brief any part of your life, and they're all relationships. So I say your relationship with someone else, your parents, your kids, your partner, your relationship with your work, your relationship with a cause or a community, and really importantly, the relationship with yourself, which is the most important
Hmm.
relationship.
Hmm.
But only you know when that brief is done because intuitively it goes, yes, when
Yeah.
I read that out to myself, I'm
Yeah.
hungering, I'm ready, let's go. And
Oh
that's
my
why
God.
action just falls out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk incessantly about involving yourselves and becoming more aware of things that bring you alive, which is the hell yes. It is the hell yes. And one thing, you guys, that's so beautiful in the book, I mean, I love questions. And the question you lead with, what do I really want, but I'm afraid to admit? That's one of those irresistible questions that, really, do you want me to answer? What do I really want? Like maybe I'll just write it down in the corner of my notebook. I mean, it becomes very apparent very quickly who's holding this up. If it's hard, if you don't know this right away, or if you don't want to share it, I mean, that's a potent question, and it's a challenging one for many people, I imagine.
It's a forbidden or dangerous question for many people.
Mm.
We ask the simpler version of it all the time. What do you want for dinner? What do you want for Christmas or Hanukkah this year? What do you want for after college or after high school? But when you add the word really to it, and
Mm.
you add another layer that you're hesitant or afraid to admit. See, it's so fun. Wordplay is like painting all the layers you can add and how much each part that you layer on changes and takes you into deeper waters. But being an Asian woman, that is really a forbidden question. What do
Mm.
I want? Because in my culture, it's society first, family next,
Ah.
elders, those before me, those in authority. As a woman, very much last. So we have all, whether, it doesn't matter what culture or country you come from, we have all adopted or inherited certain beliefs about what's okay and what's not okay, what's appropriate or not. And I remember having a woman on a retreat I taught in Costa Rica. And the first day she said, my parents told me never ask that question. What do you want? It's a guarantee to disappointment. Oh, yes, that was a well-intentioned piece of advice that she was raised with and probably given with a lot of love. But my goodness, how it has narrowed her in her adult life.
Wow. And I come across so many artists and creatives that come to these destination workshops, and it's really a beautiful thing. I mean, it's almost like salmon who have swum upstream. I mean, to have sequestered a week in a busy life, and some of them are moms. This is their first time away from their kids, and they're they are so happy to be there and guilty, and this feels so indulgent. And so it's that there's that feeling of like they're actually doing something for themselves, but it's like this is, let me just keep it on the down low. But what I say to them to try to like let that go, and I know you know this. I mean, when you get this life brief right, when you are doing something that brings you life, the overflow of that energy, the kind of mom you can be. I mean, when your kids see you being lit up, it is the most powerful influence, and you have so much more to give. I mean, we're talking about service here. If you can be in this state, you are more generous, you're more creative, you're happier. It has a ripple effect, and so yes, it's for you, but there's an overflow, and I talk about that a lot, and I for myself, when I do a lot, like I do a lot of teaching, but it all comes from my art. if I'm not making my art, I'm not a very good candidate for helping people.
That's right. We have it all backwards. We have a sense that in order to serve, we just have to keep giving, 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 and not replenishing. And there are people who have asked me, isn't this very self-centered, this practice? And I think, yes,
Yeah.
it's centered in yourself. It's centered in your truth. It's centered in your voice. But that is not the same as selfish or self-absorbed or self-indulgent. So again, words have very different meanings, but it is to be centered. And you say of my favorite words: aliveness, to be lit up, to have ripple effects, because that is what it means to have and access and unlock our power within. We live in a culture that has long been obsessed and fixated on power over. But
Yeah.
the key is, and this is what art does, to unlock the power within. And for women, Cherie and I talk about this, is we are the epicenter of creation as women. Human life starts here. And creation is the root of creativity. And so when we are lit up and we unlock all the parts of ourselves as mothers, as creators, as people who give life, when we feel aliveness, the lives that we nourish are lit up as well. That's part of the ripple effect.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that the letting go of these kind of, the limiting beliefs. I speak of that constantly. That's the first order of the day. You have some great questions and some things. How do you address that in the book? And is that in the messy stage a little bit to get people going? They've got to get unlocked or believe that they're eligible.
Yes, it's just like what you do, right? The first few days, it's getting people comfortable and reconnected to their bodies, to their intuition, to their hands, and to their words and to their voices. And that takes a moment. So I come at it in lots of different ways because one exercise might not work, one prompt might not work for one person, but it might work for somebody else.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
invite people to be playful, just like you do. If one doesn't get you anywhere, skip it, go to the next one. But each one is designed to come at it from a different angle, a different direction to try to, again, unlock and generate as many ingredients as you can carry into part two.
Yes. And so part two is about clarity. And again, I can't help as soon as I say that word, because I say it a lot in context of making art, there's clutter in art. you know, I call it, you're going to die. We call paintings art that's like that. Oh my God, I've made a dog's dinner. This is something, isn't that great? A woman at a workshop, I think her name was Elizabeth, she was from England, and she said, oh my God, I've made a dog's dinner. And I thought it was such a great example because it's like a bowl of kibble, and you just throw the carrots from leftover and a couple leftovers for the dog, and it's all jumbled together. So we use dog's dinner in my world as part of like to get our head around that, as well as a garage sale, right? Because a garage sale has no curation, has no selectivity. It's just all the things thrown out on the front lawn, and you put a nickel, and people walk by and they kick through it, as opposed to the branded Apple store where, oh my God, we
Oh my
know what,
God.
yeah.
And I work in the world that admires and holds up the Apple Store as the ultimate, right? I work with so many business people who aspire to that minimalist, cleanliness, perfection. And life isn't that. And we drive ourselves crazy when we compare ourselves to that kind of aesthetic. I love the garage sale. I'm uncomfortable with the dog's dinner, I have to admit. But I love the garage sale because there's so many treasures in the garage sale. And getting it all out allows you to hold up those treasures, to go into those corners again, to reconnect with them and see beauty, and to redirect them in new ways.
Absolutely. And the way that this is done in art is literally making things that you care about, love, that bring you alive. It's different for everyone, more noticeable, and the others in the background. And
Yeah.
so, can you go over the prompt that you use about the one around the question that's helpful for, I guess I call it curation, but the selectivity? How do you help people do that? I think is
Yeah, so I hope I'm going to answer it. If I'm going in a different direction, just tell me. But once you get your messiness, all the ingredients and threads out on the table, we sort them. And the key is that feeling that you keep saying, aliveness,
yeah,
connecting with your aliveness. And I ask people to now let's sort and separate all the ingredients you've generated in Get Messy. Which ones are meaningful, meaning they're sacred, non-negotiable? You can't imagine this relationship, whether it's to yourself, someone else, or to your work. You can't imagine not having or experiencing these ingredients. Put them in one place. Then let's just cut out all the crap, the meaningless, the stuff that's circumstantial, situational, distracting, drama, anything like that. And let's pull them aside. So we're sorting the garage sale.
yes,
Then you get to, and then there's a lot of neutral stuff. It's just there. It's background. It's awesome. It's context. It makes things feel full. But then you can zero in on the pile that you've collected that is sacred, non-negotiable. And now there's your clay. That's the best ingredients to work with. Now, how do you want to form it? And because you've distilled now, you've curated, distilled, but not in that fancy art museum curation, but in just really just picking the
yes,
best farmers market ingredients to play with. And now you can cook your stew. And that's where the fun begins.
yes. And it's generative, and it gives you momentum because the things you're working with you love because it's your mix. One
And
of
it's
the
totally unique to you.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And we use things like inspiration boards and ways to choose colors that we love. And when you have that display, uh, everything, you just look at it and you feel like going into it because it's yours. It's custom design,
And it's inviting you, it's you inviting yourself deeper
Yeah.
in. It's such a great feeling. And having done a lot of art when I was younger, and I had said before we got on this call, I plan for the final chapters of my life to be steeped in art, is I want to be in that feeling of aliveness. Now, it's not always comfortable because you meet bumpy places. I remember when I used to paint, I'd think, okay, I'm finished now. It looks wonderful. And my teachers would say, oh, wait, you have 2 more hours. And I was like, oh, no, I want a new sheet. They're like, no, no, no.
Ah,
Keep painting on this sheet. And I was like, no, I'll destroy this thing that I love. And then you go into it and you think, oh, it's all gone to crap now. And then you work with that. And at the end, your soul spent, and you look at it and you think, I could have never planned for
yeah,
this in front of me. And
yeah,
look how rich, layered, wonderful it is
yeah,
because I leaned into that agitation.
yeah, yeah. The the fear of messing up, right? It's beautiful the way you created this because it allows you to get outside of yourself, and because it's just words, and maybe it's scary for people, but is like free. You talk about the brain dump of just getting everything out on the page. It's just a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm challenged with expensive art materials and people don't want to spend the money and I'm not worth it. And, but it's so beautiful to use the symbols, the words to hold all these that you can fill.
I have never appreciated words more. I always appreciated them. Those were my tools as a strategist, but now I appreciate all the different forms of writing and the different roles that writing can play. Because in the beginning of the book, writing is pure exploratory permission. Just like you said, brain dump it all out. Don't
Mm,
put rules, don't edit, don't plan, don't withhold. And then later, writing and words become the sharpening tools.
yeah.
You get to really create and sculpt, and then they become the push off, taking you to the edge of your comfort zone, but also the beginning of where excitement, that nervous anticipation and excitement begins, and playing with those words, sharpening them, pushing, nudging them to see how far you're willing to go, and then combining them into magical formulas that are distinctly yours. So I have such an appreciation. I have always been a visual person. So it's odd that I became a strategist, and I just wanted to be around visual people in advertising and art directors and
Hmm.
wonderful creatives. And now I can see how pa- that simple piece of paper and a pencil can be so unlocking and potent.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. And you talk about pushing it 3x, pushing these ideas way beyond. And by the way, there's the same thing with art. The car is not going to spin out. You think it's going to, but we never go to the edge. We're way far away from it. And I just, when I saw that and I read that last night, I was like, wow, that's such a powerful thing to do, to just magnify it. Could you speak about that? Because I love that idea.
Yeah, to get to a great creative brief, that's where the first it's distillation and getting to the most sacred non-negotiable stuff. So once you're in that camp, you're in a good zone, you're in the zone. That then the challenge becomes, how do you express it in a way that is sharp and sticky, meaning it can just tattoo onto your mind and heart. You don't have to call it up on your phone. You don't have to carry the piece of paper or your notebook with you everywhere. You can take a photo of it. You can do whatever you want. But sharpness means it's so pointed, it's so concise, and sticky means it's memorable. It's so memorable that it's always with you, but it gives you that, yes, aliveness when you read it. So you play with the words, and I encourage people, the 3X is first, how honest is it? So
Mm,
state your brief, which are 5 declarative statements. So these are all statements that you get to an exclamation mark. Even if you don't like to use exclamation marks, I know people are too cool to use exclamation marks, but you want to have that feeling. And so the first push is write all those statements and get them down. But then you push it to, how honest are you? What are you leaving? Because when we read back our writing, you immediately know,
yeah.
right? Are
Yeah,
you,
me too.
yeah, it's not quite right. Like I could be more honest if I were to let it more, I could squeeze a little more out. The next push is, how bold can you be? How, what's the biggest version of this desire or ambition or im- thing of importance to you? And my favorite brief that really tested the boldness was my marriage brief. After 17 years of being together, my husband asked me, "Are you still madly in love with me?" Ah, my first, I mean, we have 4 kids, we've moved 4 times. The immediate answer was no. And it got right here, and I luckily did not let it out. But then later I had to sit with the question, what is mad love? And first, before I could go to, do I want mad love with my husband? I had to say, do I want mad love? And that was immediate, visceral, almost like a hunger. Yes, I want mad love. I'm too young to never have mad love, experience the fire of desire again. Who am I? I'm not ready to die. So yes, I want mad love. Now the harder question was, do I want it with him? And eventually, which is in the book, I went through layers of questions to get to the answer of yes, yes. But I felt it was impossible.
Mm,
So what was the bold push in that brief was to actually write down something I didn't believe was possible, or I couldn't see how it would
yes.
be possible.
Yes.
But I wrote it. I am ready to fall madly in love with my husband again. And
You,
that's the push.
yes. That's so great that we don't get to know always our vantage point. We can't see the end point. We can't know if we can get there, but we just have to move towards it. And that's so great. That's so great to just take the biggest bite you can be, as big as most courageous bite you can, you know. That's really great.
There's something, I don't have the word. Is it cathartic, or there is an ounce of terror in it. But true courage for me is to allow yourself to admit that you want something
Mm,
without any guarantee that you will ever get it. And that is the deep, honest way of being with yourself.
yeah. It's self-love. Absolutely.
It is. It is. And or for me, after I've been living this way for 14 years now, I can't live a different way. I can't stuff myself back into the box of checking off everybody else's bucket lists or what society says is the right or wrong thing. It just, it's a different flavor of living that has its own addiction. It is creative living.
Yes. Yes. The third part when we move in the book was getting active, putting this in motion.
Well, I mentioned it at the beginning, but the first and foremost thing is if you got clear to a yes clarity, that
Yeah.
aliveness, then action starts to fall out of you. It starts to direct you. And I invite people to do it in the tiniest of ways because when people think about change or the overused cliche word of transformation, they think about giant leaps. I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to leave my partner. I'm going to travel the world. And sure, for some people, those big strokes and leaps are great. But for most people, I invite them to go into the tiniest things, but they can do daily, continuously, consistently, constantly, because that's what creates momentum. And that's what I call the unfolding, because the world will meet you with every small shift that you make. Because every shift you make in your being, how you show up, how you serve this relationship, is an invitation to the other people in your life, to the circumstances and situations, and it invites them to show up differently, but through very subtle cues. And I think, and I've experienced, so I'm living proof of it, that the smallest changes in how we show up can have the biggest ripples.
Yeah. Little and often is it.
Mhm.
In the practice of making something, and we're making ourselves in your case, you know.
Mm.
It's a practice that you come back to again and again and again and again. Chasing goosebumps is, I love that. Beautiful. We have a thing, I'm always reminding, if you can, following breadcrumbs is how we describe it, how I describe it, that there's these clues and they come in the most synchronistic ways. It's magical. Um, when you're on purpose, when you're in congruence with truly what lights you up, amazing things tend to happen. I'm always a bit challenged to talk about this murky, wondrous part of what I teach, but it is the reason I am teaching. That when I discovered what can happen when you can create the container for first for myself, but then for those I work with, it is just the most wondrous, mysterious kind of experience. And can you speak to that a little bit? It's just,
You
I think,
use such good phrasing, on purpose, when you are on purpose, which is so beautifully put. And I understand your discomfort with teaching or promising things like synchronicity, serendipity, dare we call it magic, things
yeah,
that feel magical. And I felt the same writing the book, but I had to speak to it at least in the stories and in the ways that I have experienced it. And I know in this practice not to expect it or to be attached to it. And that's why it's so dangerous to teach it and to
yes,
practice it. But to set people off on the course, so I call it the unfolding, I call it the dance. I know people can dance differently in their lives. And I know that those subtle shifts in when you dance. So for me, the path to mad love, which was from impossible to mad love in 4 months, but the path there started with a simple act of appreciation. When my husband handed me the coffee in the morning as I was on my way out the door with our third child in tow, ready to drop her off and then head on to San Francisco for work. I usually was on the phone already as I walked breezed through the kitchen, grabbed the coffee, grabbed my bag, grabbed my daughter, and we just be off. And my simple, subtle shift was to turn to him and look him in the eyes, take the coffee, thank you, and lean in for a kiss. Not even a passionate kiss, just a kiss. And that simple act of acknowledgement, the surprise on his face, the surprise on my daughter's face, the feeling when I got in the car was like, wait a second, what? We can do that. Why am I not doing that? And I did that every morning for that week. And then suddenly he showed up differently as I'm
mm,
walking in bed or when we're at the grocery store. And 4 months later, we were in the Redwoods renewing our vows. We had invited my mother to come up to watch the four kids. And why hadn't we done that before? And on the third morning, I woke up and I thought, what is this feeling?
mm,
Okay, could it be? And so there's nothing ridiculous about any of that other than, actually, this isn't ridiculous at all. What my husband and I talked about in replaying those moments was that, wow, this is always available to us. We
yeah,
just had to choose it.
yes. Duh. As we're kind of wrapping up here, that you spoke about something that in the last part of the book, in the third step, where we have to shift from thinking about what we want to how we want. And this is the feeling that come from that is so, you're saying it in a slightly different way, but I recognize it in the experience of living, which then brings different uh, different things. The universe responds to that. The field sends things back. And it's just how we show up, like how you took the coffee from your husband, right? It's like, it's just so subtle. Takes 2 extra seconds, but it starts this alchemy. It shifts everything. And so you changed how you were being, right? I mean, I
We
just
all have that capacity available to us. And I know people are in devastating situations and really challenged. We're challenged with really deeply emotional and hard things, but we always have that choice for those subtle shifts. And that part of the book was the hardest one for me to place
yeah.
because I wanted it much earlier on because I knew it was the pivotal moment in the book. Because when we ask ourselves, what do you want? What do I want? There's a different flavor of answers that come out. But when you ask, how do I want? And it's not how do I get what I want? I
Right.
just
Right.
clarify for everyone.
Yes.
How do you want to experience? How do you want to show up? How do you want to serve? Or how do you want to shift? That is the turn from this outward looking, bringing something in to an inward activating moment because now it's about agency and accountability.
Mm.
So, from what to how is the biggest shift that the practice invites. It takes you from this far off distant thing outside of myself, the what, into me and what agency do I have in this relationship? And what am I going to do differently? And to me, that really is the outcome I'm hoping for through the book is a turn towards your personal agency. That you have a say in every relationship in your life. You have a say. You're not a victim to it. You're not along for the ride. But it doesn't require much, but it does require engagement and clarity.
And yes, and engagement, another word for that is just presence to really understand he's made you coffee, you know?
Every day. And it's beautifully crafted. He's from Seattle. He does this well. And I just grab it like a Folgers, and I'm out the door. Why do I do that? It's so disrespectful, that small act of not seeing him, not
Yeah.
appreciating him. It's this small moment that says so much about where he sits in my heart. And when
Mm.
I shifted that and made that turn, it unlocked again a whole different way of being there for each other.
I have one question for you as we kind of finish here, and then I want to get to want the audience to know where they can get your book because when this comes out, this book will be ready. So we'll do that in a second. But you've written the life brief here for first yourself, but then everyone else. And I know from experience trying to work on a book that is for the world. I mean, talk about expansion, and I'm just wondering you've completed this now and what you've learned and what's the takeaway of stepping into something that was personal but then making it universal. How do you feel? What have you learned and what are the takeaways to that? I'm just so curious.
Oh, I don't know that I can answer that in full. It's all so abundant right now, abundance of all sorts of feelings. But my process of doing it was just honoring my truth and the truth of what I've experienced and the truth of what I've learned for people. And there were moments of telling my own story that were raw and uncomfortable because they included people I love, most
Mm,
importantly my husband. But and he was so there were bumps along the road for sure, because every person who participates in a story has their own story to tell. And this was my story. And I tell some stories about my father who has passed, but I needed to hold my truth as well as hold empathy for what I know now to be his experience. And those were the biggest challenges, but I knew I had to do it for the book to be unlocking and self-activating because I couldn't ask people to go to the edges of their own discomfort or to their own naked honesty if I
Mm,
wasn't willing to do it myself. And it was a demonstration to the reader that I know these challenges. I know this discomfort. I know this fear. I know the imposter syndrome. And it was so I had to hold a line of, is this true? Am I embellishing? Am I underplaying it?
hmm.
Am I performing?
Uh-huh.
Right. And that was always the compass of truth. As a strategist, we search for truths, and there are many truths to any situation. But at the end of the day, is it true from what I am seeing, speaking, witnessing, experiencing?
Oh, yes. The North Star of truth, and just to follow that. Going from a personal story that you maybe share with friends, the vulnerability of the world, and then to be able to promote it and get behind it, and all the things, the energy that it takes to birth something and to put it out into the world and say, yes, is this is worth it and it's valuable and it's such a growth.
Well, I would, at some future time, I want to hear about your experience because you've been living all of this through a different canvas, through a different medium. But you too have really exposed yourself in vulnerable ways. And so that's a
Yeah.
continued conversation.
Yes, to be continued. But I'll just say that it is the breakdowns, it is the shadowy parts of the story that gives you actual permission to offer help, because it sounds like you've been there. I certainly have. Like I know what it feels like to not know, you know, to not be confident, to not be sure, and then that you can speak about confidence, you can speak about it, but you have empathy, right? You hold that humility. It's part of being able to promote something and push it out into the world because you have humility, as well, and generosity and all the rest. But yeah, I'm so excited for all that's coming for you. This is such a powerful book here.
Thank you. I just love being in conversation with another creator and artist. It's they are the juiciest conversations because they ultimately are about life and meaning and aliveness.
Yes. And artists are willing to go deeper. You can't, that's the inquiry is just part of the making. And so I think that's why these conversations get so good when someone has an experience with asking, well, what do I do here? Should I add yellow? Should I add blue? Oh my God, I love this. Why do I love this and not that?
It is that inquiry,
Yeah.
and life is more soul satisfying when we do that inquiry and we do
Yeah.
it with engagement.
So tell us where, if people want to get this book, where is the best place for them to get it? We'll have links in the show notes, you guys. And I think you even had a promotion, and I'll let you speak to it, about some extra kind of course or work study people could do. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Well, I did have a course.
Okay.
Did it through VCU, but I will have some courses coming up in 2024. The place to find out about all of that is on thelifebrief.com.
Okay.
And as of today, when we're recording this, my book is now available anywhere and everywhere books are sold. So go to your favorite indie bookstore, or if you like the fast delivery of Amazon and everything in between, it's there. And you can also follow me at Bonnie Wan Official on Instagram. And I'd love to connect with people because I want to hear, now that the book is out, how they are experiencing it. Because as you know, once we create something, it's no longer ours. We get to learn and understand it in more rich nuance from the people who have it and are doing it.
Bonnie, thank you so much for being here. This was just the best part of my week. I couldn't wait to talk to you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. I love it. And I'm going to come on one of your retreats, Morocco, Spain, one of them, Mexico, any of them. I'll do any of them.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much. So everyone, thanks so much for being here. I want to let you know that we have an amazing free workshop coming up called the Art of Your Life Workshop. And you can find out all about it at artlifefree.com. I'm going to be teaching things. It's over 5 days. And it is, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 things that are going to be super helpful in creating and discovering the art of your life. So check that out. That's at artlifefree.com. And if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button to get more cool interviews all about creativity, authenticity, and purpose. You guys, thanks so much for being here. Okay, bye.